Hi there, CoronaTV viewers. I'm Johnny Damon.
You're my bobblehead Joel today, just nod up and down if you agree. Welcome to the show, Mitch Joel. How are you?
Happy birthday to you.
And just look at those washboard abs.
I know, right? Oh yeah, this is the fittest I've ever been in my life, you know.
Happy birthday from Johnny Damon.
First of all, let's just do the elbow bump.
Local Paralympian Joe Delagrave isn't taking any time off during the dog days of summer. 400 days out from Tokyo 2020, he's hitting the gym hard. With the help of his wife, April, Delagrave is training 5 to 6 days a week as he gets ready to compete in wheelchair rugby out in Tokyo. Now, a boating accident paralyzed him from the chest down during his freshman year at Winona State, and now he'll be on his third Olympic team. He says whatever your circumstance, positives can be made from them.
I think a lot of people, you know, someone in my similar situation could play that victim card where it's kind of easy and it's lazy to say, you know what, it's not my fault I'm in this wheelchair, or it's not my fault I acquired this disease, or whatever it is. That there's a lot of people that have things that are hidden, that are anxiety or depression or whatever, you know, things like that that people can't even see. But I think it's, you know, every day we wake up and we get a choice whether we're going to have a positive attitude, find an opportunity in our circumstances, and don't let the circumstances define you.
Great way to look at it. And after Tokyo, Delagrave plans to be a motivational speaker full-time.
After Tokyo, well, I guess we'll talk to Joe about his journey, his incredible story. We'll talk to him about adversity. We'll talk to him about double adversity, right? The fact that there is Tokyo. Well, there was Tokyo. What's he doing about that now? I'm so excited, actually, to have him on the show. I got a chance to talk to him briefly, just briefly, in the green room, in our little virtual green room. I'm actually, I'm so privileged, I'm humbled, I'm proud to just even be associated with him, to have the opportunity to have him on the show. We often talk about heroes, and, you know, our whole mindset is shifting and adjusting. When we think about first responders, when we think about essential services, when we think about people that work at a grocery, our frontline heroes in the hospitals, and then people that have overcome real adversity, it puts everything into perspective at the end of the day. And so I'm going to have him on the show, and I thought it would be nice to give you a little bit of a clip to whet your appetites, as it were, and so you could find out a little bit about him. So we've got Joe on the show, and he is a bronze medal Paralympian and now a keynote speaker. So he will be coming on soon. But, you know, let's put everything into perspective right now. It is National Coconut Cream Pie Day. So happy National Coconut Cream Pie Day. What are you doing to celebrate this auspicious day, besides spending 30 minutes with myself and Joe, and then coming and hanging out with us in the Zoom room? I can promise you that everyone who comes to the Zoom room today, you will get a virtual coconut cream pie, maybe in the face, but you will definitely get it. And we got a whole bunch of birthdays today. And, you know, one of the things is yesterday Marcus was on the show. He was amazing. He gave me some advice. I'm trying to build this and get better every day. And he said, you know, you probably don't need to call out every person and mention them by name. They can see their names and they can feel that they're part of the show. So I thought that was really good advice, unless, of course, you're someone whose name isn't being mentioned. But I do want to call out just two people that I know from my industry, Jill Griffin and Jason Boshoff, I think they'd say in Afrikaans, because, you know, we're talking rugby today. Jason is a client as well. So it's good to kind of, you know, reconnect with people, and I hope he's doing well. He's in Florida, so I guess he's got to be doing okay. The weather's got to be a little bit better. This morning we had some pretty severe news. April unemployment rate has now risen to 14.7%, and we are in Great Depression territory. I mean, Great Depression territory. Forget about recessions, depressions. These are things that are going to have to allow us to do a lot of thinking and rethinking and introspection, and providing different levels of support to our friends, our family, our peers. Mental health and physical health are going to come together big time, and one plays into another. It's something that I know Joe can talk about. And so I definitely wanted to put that little stake in the ground, because and it's not done yet. It's not done yet. We're not out the woods, but we can get out the woods if we come together and we help one another. I've got a few random things as well. There was a fire in Cape Town, where I'm from, and on the mountain. And my brother went walking, during this quarantine period, when he was allowed to. What's happened in South Africa is they were really, really strict in South Africa about the lockdown. You could not leave. You could not go for a walk or run outside. You couldn't do much of what we can do in the US. And now what they've done is they've created a window for people to exercise, to go running or cycling, or etc. My brother was walking on the mountain post this fire that was burning. In fact, when I was in South Africa at the beginning of March, there were the fires. I think I missed them by about a day. And he saw these two flowers. He said he'd never seen them before, ever in his life. And suddenly he saw them blooming on the mountain. Now, I don't think I need to spell it out for you, but if you actually look at them, what you realize is they are the same flower. They are essentially the flower that is the coronavirus. I don't know what it means. I don't know if it's a sign. I don't know how to interpret it, but I just thought it was really, really interesting. Hello to you, Joey. Hello to you, Bob. Hashtag pie in the face. And hello to you, Jan, my three regulars. Joe, who is in the green room. You will see these guys in the little Zoom after show. So it's going to be awesome to have them. Some other things as well, which is, I think sometimes amidst all of this madness and craziness, we see elements of expression of creativity. And I thought that these two little riffs, they're almost kind of memes, like visual memes, plays on the whole idea of flattening the curve. What if we do nothing versus what if we actually do something? And those of you that have been following this influx in the US of these murder death hornets, I have no idea. I mean, they look terrifying if you've actually looked at them. And I just saw an article today that actually says that it may be a little bit of hype, and they may not be, in fact, death hornets or murder death hornets. But there was that little interpretation. And then one that's a little bit less maybe irreverent, this idea of capitalism, something you've heard me talk about quite a bit, the evolution of capitalism. Capitalism needs to evolve. We're not talking about devolve. We're not talking about socialism as much as we're talking about this idea that these inequalities, these chasms, have to be flattened or bridges have to be built. And in this case, I think it's interesting how people are now using the curves in order to express themselves, or maybe express an idea in a familiar visual type of capacity. Now, I haven't done much promotion or self-promotion, at least I don't think I have. I'm just trying to focus on my effort, which is to build this platform and to help people, whether it's my fellow authors and speakers or you guys watching at home. But I am proud to share with you that Built to Suck won an award. It may be my first award I've ever won, maybe in my life, but certainly for my books. Just won a distinguished favorite in the an independent press award in the current affairs category. And I'm just really proud of it. You know, many people have always said, Joe, you're ahead of your time. Your books always come out way too early. I wrote Join the Conversation in 2007. When I wrote Life After the 30-Second Spot, some of my bold new approaches were consumer-generated content. Well, guess what? YouTube didn't exist yet. And what I called communal marketing, marketing to and through communities, which became known as social media, Facebook didn't exist yet. One of my approaches was mobile. Well, the smartphone and the iPhone didn't exist yet. But in this case, in Built to Suck, I think the timing, unfortunately, in some cases, couldn't be more appropriate. On the cover of the book, you see J.C. Penney, you see Sears. Just in the past few weeks, we've seen J.C. Penney, Neiman Marcus, and J. Crew filing or announcing that they would be filing for bankruptcy. So my message to you out there is, if you are a company that sucks and wants to suck less, the key to success is to suck less. All you got to do is just read the book, because the book really does spell out how to come out of this, how to prepare yourself for the next crisis, because there will be a next crisis. With Marcus, I showed this little image, and I wanted to bring it back very briefly, because I think, if you look at this, what you realize is from, the ashes rises the phoenix. From adversity comes incredible invention and reinvention. And it's just fascinating to think that during the Great Recession in 2008, we saw not just some small companies. We're Dropbox, Groupon, Venmo, Uber, WhatsApp, Slack, Square, Instagram. I'm pretty much reading every single one of them. I may as well just say Zendesk, WordStream, Cloudera, and Pinterest. This shows you that when our back is against the wall, we will rise up, and we will conquer that adversity. It is everything we know. It is all we know. And it is ultimately the thing that powers us, powers the human race, powers us to be better, powers us to be able to defeat the enemy. And the enemy right now is adversity. And no one knows that more than my guest, Joe Delagrave. So Joe, how about that intro? Welcome to the show.
Man, I am fired up. Let's go.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
Let's play some rugby. I mean, I'm excited because I'm from South Africa, and I love rugby. I live for rugby. We'll talk about how you took up rugby in a moment. But one of my best friends from college was a rugby player. He played for Natal, and he played for University of Cape Town. And the thing about him, you kind of remind me a lot of him. You almost look a little bit like him. He would always talk about his fat fingers, that his fat fingers struggled on the keyboard. And that's a little inside joke between Joe and myself. When you said that earlier to me, that's what I thought about as well. I think fat fingers is better than cauliflower ears. So, it's what you have in common.
Yeah. Well, and if I make a typing gaffe, there's plenty of times in life too where I can just slap down the disability card, which I do all the time for like great parking, or for if I want to button line at a movie or something like that. Like you just slap it down sometimes, and I'm like, I haven't met this guy, and over email, if I'm like, woe is me, I've got a disability, he's probably gonna take it the wrong way, so I'm like, I'll blame my fat fingers instead. Yeah,
well, it's part of being a rugby player. So Joe, let's go back, and obviously I played that little intro clip, that video clip. Your story is a fascinating one, and I would love for you to take us through that story, because you may want to go back even further, but the essence of it is football player. I assume not soccer football, right? The other football player, college, in your freshman year, you have an accident, and well, you'll tell us the rest. But why don't you go back to your college year and what happened?
Yeah, and just like maybe a few steps before that was growing up in high school, I loved playing sports, and it was in team environments that I loved the most. I loved being a part of a team and figuring out how to be a leader within that team, and then going from basically like how do I get involved in this team in the way that we can go win, and how do I fit into this? And so those puzzle pieces were always fascinating to me. I actually did plays and musicals as well, because I just love that team environment as well. And I always joke around that like I was Zac Efron before he was. He's just better looking, has better abs, but it worked out for him and not for me. But no, going to college, it was one of my favorite. It was one of my favorite memories, and that was my goal. I wanted to play a college sport, and I was pretty decent on the basketball field or court, and pretty decent on the football field. And gosh, like that was the dream and goal and desire, is to go to college, play a sport, get an education, and have success and figure out life after that. But that was kind of like the ultimate thing. And so I went up to that first year, the freshman year, and played ball, and everything was going very well for me as far as that goes. I was able to play as a true freshman, which means you're not redshirted. You don't have to sit out a year and lift weights and all that. You actually get to play, and so that was really special as well. And so the whole year went by really well. I played for the Winona State Warriors. We had our color was purple, so the Purple Warriors basically. And then we had a fantastic year that year, one of the best years in school history. And so like the whole year, looking back, was just a phenomenal experience. In between my freshman and sophomore years is where life kind of changed a little bit.
All right, so you tell us about the accident and what happened and what happened next.
Yeah, so I've always thought maybe I need to come up with a more unique story, like I got attacked by a bear or something, but that hasn't really happened yet. And what happened was just a tragic, really bizarre accident. I was on the Mississippi River, which borders my hometown of Prairie du Chien, Wisconsin, and on the river, and growing up on a river town, you're always on the river, like every weekend or probably multiple times a week. And my buddy had his grandpa's old bass fishing boat, which was a little 35 horsepower boat, barely moved up and down the river, but it was great for us. We wanted to kneeboard and fish and be high school and college kids and goof around and whatever. And so we were on a boat one day, and my two best friends that I grew up on the same street together, Kyle and Adam. Adam's out kneeboarding and Kyle's driving the boat. And we're in a back slough of the Mississippi, which is just off the main channel in a very calm part of the water, because it was way easier to kneeboard in those parts of the water than it was the more choppy main channel where there's a lot more traffic. And so Kyle's driving and he accidentally hits the bottom of the river, and you never know how deep or shallow the water is back in the sloughs. And so he accidentally hits the bottom of the river, which had never happened before. And I was just sitting there watching Adam out the back of the boat in case he fell so we can go around and get him. And in the span of a split second, boom, like Kyle hits the bottom, I fly backwards, my chair breaks, which sends me flying to the front of the boat where I hit my head, and I broke my neck at the C6 and 7 level, which is 6 and 7 vertebrae down from the base of your skull.
It's unbelievable. And so the thing that I'm thinking when I listen to you is it's a freak accident. It's a fluke. Have you ever, we'll continue with your story in a moment, but have you ever looked back in a weird sort of way and wondered, certainly you've wondered why it happened. Have you ever thought in a crazy way that it was meant to happen?
The hindsight is a beautiful thing. And, looking back, and a lot of the questions I get sometimes from like either friends or when I go and speak or whatever it would be is like, would you choose this life again? 15 years later, and that's a pretty big window for hindsight and for life experience. And like honestly, and part of my spiel is talking about when I was 19 and talking about like the thoughts that come in your head when something like this happens, and the things that have happened since then. It's an easy, like, I'll take this life. Like I've got and basically it focuses around my family, my wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and she's been a huge support in this in our entire story. And then we have 3 beautiful little kids, 8, 6, and 4, who are fantastic. And it's a lot of fun to hang out with them during this whole time. For the most part, sometimes I just want to go and scream. But like any parent, it's trial and tribulations. But at the same time, it's been a complete joy to have that happen in my life. And then where wheelchair rugby has taken me, I wouldn't change it. And you always think about why. I think that's a human nature to go like, why is this happening? How do we, and everyone has that question, whether it's a tragic accident or you lose a job or whatever circumstance that you have in life that's not controlled, is that question of why kind of haunts us or paralyzes us sometimes.
So we've just met for the first time, obviously through this experience. Yeah. But my father passed away in a boating accident when I was 4 years old, and yeah, he was 31 years old. I was 4. My sister was 2. My mother was pregnant with my brother, and So when I saw boating accident, it's a real strong connection. And yeah, and the question of why, because you can never know why, but if there is somehow that little bit of hope that things happen for a reason which we may not understand, we may never understand, it creates at least a semblance, I think, of maybe not normalcy, but it allows us to cope just a little bit better than we might have before.
Yeah, and I think it's cliche to say this, but at the same time, it's really real. Is that a lot of times when we get stuck wondering why, and we get stuck on the reason, we often miss the revelation of it, and like we miss the opportunity in it, and going like, you can live life despite the circumstances, and something as tragic as losing your dad when you're 4. Oh my gosh, I can't imagine. And for me, it's obviously it takes time. It takes a grieving process. It takes getting through it. It takes wrestling with some real and raw emotions. But when you stop like beating yourself up over why or the reason, and then going, I have the revelation of, hey, I can live this life out and find opportunities in it. It becomes really, really important in that journey.
And I don't want to dwell too much on the moment, but there's obviously a sequence of events from waking up and realizing, I guess, there and then, most likely, that you didn't have use of your legs. And I don't know if you want to talk a little bit, maybe not rehash that, but what I'm more interested in is this period of coming back from it and how long it took you, and then that moment when you seem like such a positive, constructive guy, where you realize that you're not going to be a victim and you're going to take control of the situation.
Yeah, that victim piece is I think it can really haunt a lot of us, and we like to, in our society, unfortunately, we like to play the blame game. Like, we like to have blame, we put the blame on someone, as long as it's not me. And so like that yin and yang of the blame game and personal responsibility within that. And rehashing a little bit was, and I want to share with people that it doesn't happen overnight. Like, I didn't break my neck. I'm, laying in the hospital bed. The doctor's telling me I'm not going to walk again. And like, obviously that's devastating at any age, especially when you're 19 and you feel invincible. And you're like, what are you talking about? I'm 6'5", 260 pounds. And I'm a big, rough, tough football player. And I'm going to get through this. And the doctor's like, you're not going to walk again. And like, life just comes to a screeching halt. And as I'm thinking about it, and my best friends and support group, and in that fall, when everyone's going back to college for their second year, and I'm stuck in a hospital bed, I'm going, wow, this is real. What does this look like? And what am I going to do? And that's when all the questions start circling around in my head. And so it's a process it's a process to pivot. And I think sometimes we miss the boat on the process, or on that waiting period, because there's time. Like, it's important when we recalibrate or pivot or redirect, whatever verbiage you want to use, it's important to actually look at those feelings and emotions and reflect on them and recalibrate your heart within those feelings and emotions. Because I think a lot of times we want to just skip and pivot and go and react, which is great. Like, reacting to the coronavirus and this whole pandemic it's important, that your show's like been born out of it, and it's amazing. But I also think, like, making sure that we don't forget to spend time on the feelings that we have. So like, doing that foundational work is important, because 3 months down the road, 3 years down the road, if we don't do that work, I think some stuff can come crashing down. And so that's kind of like, I spent a lot of time on that mentally to prepare myself to say, okay, now we can continue on living life in a wheelchair.
Jan asks, how has your mind changed from your experience?
Yeah, gosh, my mind, to be completely honest with you, like, that's probably the hardest aspect of any of this, is the mental thing. Because there's real emotions that come up. And so I'm learning to give myself grace with some of those things. For me, as a dad, like, learning that I had some triggers in my life that would come up, and it wasn't my wife's fault, or it wasn't my kid's fault. And like, feelings of inadequacy. When I first became a father 8 years ago, I'm like, well, if my son can throw the football farther than I can, like, am I gonna be validated as a dad still? And learning through those things that just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean I'm inadequate as a father, or just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean I'm can't add up to being a really good husband. And so like learning those things and giving myself a little grace, but also actually reflecting on that and diving into some of those triggers, I think help make yourself be honest.
There's you have a shirt on. Maybe tilt the camera so we can see. I'm pretty sure I know what it says. USA, USA. And I'm thinking to myself, I've been into Olympia sports or Steiner sports. I've been into Models, and I've bought a fake USA shirt or a shirt. I'm not the athlete that wore that shirt. It's incredible that that's your shirt. You didn't go into a sporting store, You've come back now, and I would love for you to just spend a couple of moments to talk about rugby and how did rugby come about, and how did this idea of becoming a Paralympian, when you came back and when you decided to, I imagine, embrace sport again, did you have any idea that you would be an Olympian?
Are you kidding me? No. When I was in the hospital, I remember a coach telling me, hey, there's some adaptive sports you can play. And I probably kicked him out. I was like, honestly, as a 19-year-old and being very ignorant, I'm thinking adaptive sports are pathetic. I'm not doing that. I don't want to have some hug and then I go out and compete and it's not really a competition. But I had no idea that the Paralympics existed and that they were extremely competitive and they're the second biggest sporting event in the world. I had no idea. And then with rugby, I had no idea. I obviously didn't grow up in South Africa. I'm not from there. And I had no idea what rugby was and then later during my rehabilitation phase, that one to 2 years after my accident, I didn't play sports or anything. And I actually ate like a football player and ballooned up to 285 pounds. And I had really good support people around me, like my wife now, who was my girlfriend at the time. And then my best friends, Kyle and Adam, and a lot of community support. And I had gotten big to the point where Kyle's like, hey, you need to weigh yourself. And I'm like, dude, I weigh 250. I'm fine. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. I'm in a wheelchair. And he was adamant about getting me, and he was very nice about it, but hey, we should probably weigh you. And I weighed, and it was 284 pounds. And then I'm pretty sure I didn't eat a Snickers in between, but I jumped back on because I was zeroed out. The bed's broken. There's no way this scale's right. I got back on, it said 285. And I'm like, okay, the game's over. I understand. I need to go find a sport. And so I looked up wheelchair sports online. I found wheelchair basketball, which for a quadriplegic isn't a good sport to play just because we don't have the function to play it. And then saw wheelchair racing, and I'm like, that looks miserable. I don't really like to run anyways. I'm a football player, not a runner. So I don't want to push in a wheelchair around a track, let alone run. And then found wheelchair rugby and clicked on this basically clickbait video. It said murder ball, and wheelchair rugby used to be called murder ball. So I'm like, as a 20-year-old kid, let's click on this. If anything, it's an entertaining video.
That's awesome. Who do I get to murder?
Yeah, exactly. And so I clicked on it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of crippled people rolling around, chasing each other, smashing into each other, and they're trying to hurt themselves. This is amazing, but an oxymoron, a complete bizarre, weird sport. And so I'm like, I want to go to a practice. I looked up a practice close to where I lived, and it was about 2.5 hours away, and we drove to a practice and got in a chair that night and became hooked. And it's taken me on this crazy journey.
So to represent Team USA, to win a bronze medal, which Paralympics was it that you won the bronze medal in?
Yeah, so I won bronze medal in 2012. I made my first national team in 2009. I got cut a few times for training squads or for travel squads, but made the 2012 Paralympics. We got the bronze medal, and it means more to me 8 years later than it did at the time. At the time, we were really pissed off that we didn't win gold and lost by 1 to Canada in the semifinals. So I used to call it my brown poopy medal for a while, but then it makes it. I'm so appreciative of it that I have the medal to show people, and people get excited about it. And so it's been a really good learning lesson on overcoming some of those failures and learning from failure in such a big stage of losing in the semifinal, and how you can pivot and learn from that. So yeah, it's been an amazing experience, and honestly, such an honor to wear USA across my chest and represent our country. My brother served in Afghanistan for a tour and in the Army, and so like just me being able to represent our country playing a sport, I know it's like not that, but I truly do take honor in putting on the colors.
Thank you for his service. And I have two quick questions to ask you related to your rugby experience, because, you know, I was at that Invictus game. I was at the game when the 747s came over. Nelson Mandela was there. It might be one of the, if it's not might, it is one of the greatest days of my entire life. And I was in St. Louis visiting my daughter at college under the covers at 3:30 in the morning while my family slept, watching the final of the Rugby World Cup. So my question to you is, first of all, what position do you play?
Yeah, so our rugby sport is played 4-on-4 in a basketball court, so completely different from able-bodied rugby. And so it's
you're not a hooker, is what you're saying.
Exactly. There's more. I like in rugby sense, I'd be more of like a back. You know, I'd wear the lower numbers, I think, is what they wear. The big boys wear the bigger numbers. I'm pretty sure, correct? But yeah, so I'd probably be more like that. But yeah. It's played more like basketball, where you play offensive defense, and it's super fast paced. That way, it just and able-bodied rugby is as well. But
and then the other question, which I guess is, I'm sure many people are thinking it too. What did it feel like when you heard the Star Spangled Banner, when you got your poopy, what do you call it, your poopy medal?
Well, when we got our brown,
they don't play the anthem for bronze, right?
We had to listen to Australia's anthem. So
oh my God, that's even worse, because as a South African, there's nothing worse than Australia, New Zealand.
We've been blessed enough to win some tournaments where we've heard it. 2010 World Championships, and some bigger tournaments in 2019 Zonal Championships in Lima, Peru, and every time, like, we always have the hashtag sing the anthem, because I think anthems are meant to be sung, and I know the U.S. is a little hard to sing than some of those, but like all the guys sing it at the top of their lungs, not in a good tune. It's out of tune. It's horrible.
That's a rugby thing. They just belt it out. You know, watching Sia Khaleesi, the captain of the South African rugby team, they belted it out like their life depended on it.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
So I was thinking, you know, as you embark and continue to establish yourself on the speaker circuit, thank God you and I are not competitive, because you would crush me like a paper cup, as Mr. Burns would say. I'm just kidding. I was thinking, like, I'm sure you do your fill of corporate audiences, but I was thinking to myself, you know, kids need to hear your message. Teenagers today, millennials, Gen Zers, this is a whole generation of people that don't understand adversity, right? These are the people that get the medal, for the participation medal. These are people that have to understand what real and why you need. And I guess that's my question to you. Why do you need adversity to be great? Do you need adversity to be great?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Gets me all fired up, man. You know, such a good interviewer. I'm ready to go, jump through the screen. But no, like, it's so true. I'm so passionate about it, and I find purpose in it. In that, we all fail. Like your book says, like, it suck. Like, we all suck sometimes. It's that happens, and I think honestly, as a speaker, I can help change people's perspectives or inspire people to inspire themselves by talking about my failures. Like, who cares, like, what medals I've won or whatever? Like, I want to talk to people about, hey, I broke my neck and this happened, or I didn't make the 2016 Rio Games and was an alternate, and what did I do then? Or like, how do you respond to failure? Because that's usually when you know, you have a roadblock, or you have an obstacle, or you have a circumstance that you didn't see, and a lot of people quit. And they quit on themselves. They got so far, and they forget about perspective and looking back and going, wait a second. I've done so much to work. And I think it's just, man, like, I want to talk about my failures, because I think that's when we can relate to each other. And then they can look in the mirror and go, you know what, I can take personal responsibility, not for my circumstances that I can't control, but for my response that I can't control. And that's where the victim mentality dwarfs the victim mentality. I'm not going to blame anyone anymore. I'm not going to blame my boss. I'm not going to blame my best friends in high school and college and whatever. Like, someone else might have been driving the boat, but you get to respond and control that response.
I want to say just two things. And first of all, read what Martin said, which is, I'm totally blown away by the humility and wisdom of Joe. Thank you. And I think my guest is great as well, by the way. Oh, wait, I think he's referring to you, Joe. Martin said, I have no question, just want to pass on my admiration. So I want to tell you how absolutely humbled I am to have the opportunity to interview you. One thing is apparent is you're a good guy, and you are real and honest and authentic, and you don't have to try to be someone you're not. You just are you, and that is enough. And I think as we all establish ourselves from a speaking standpoint, even what we're saying in yesterday's show, people that have to try too hard, you can see through them very, very quickly. And that's apparent. And then the other thing, and I didn't want to forget this, you said something that I thought was very profound, which was this idea that the pivot is a process, and you have to embrace and live and experience that process. And it's the first time I've ever heard of it spoken like that it's not just a moment, right? An epiphany, a light switch, and you just change. It's all part of a process. And if you can embrace that journey and that process, you can make the pivot and you can take the pivot. So that was my takeaway from what you said, Joe.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, absolutely. Embrace the process, and don't forget about those feelings and emotions. Don't bury them, because that's what's going to haunt you when you get 5 steps ahead and all of a sudden it comes crashing down because you didn't work on that foundation. Yeah,
so Joe has been very kind to give you guys a little tease, which is, if you come to the after show, which is bit.ly/CoronaTV after show, all lowercase, he's going to give you a couple of tips, things that you can use to build a strong foundation during this COVID-19 quarantine period. So come on over to our little after party, our post show, and experience that. Joe, I would love for you to take a few moments just to tell people where they can find out more about you, how they can hire you, some of the things you're doing right now to add value. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, absolutely. So the easiest way to find out more about my story and about my career as a wheelchair rugby player and speaker is www.joedelagrave.com, that you see at the bottom of the screen there. And jdelagrave14 is my Instagram handle. So you'll see, everything from rugby stuff to speaking stuff to kids stuff. So it's all over on that page. So that we try to have fun with that. And yeah, so and anything else as far as that goes, you can book me right through my website if you'd like to, or find more information out right up there. So I appreciate the time and great.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you and being on. Final question for you. Who would play you in the movie of your life?
The movie of my life? Well, people have told me I look a lot like Blake Griffin. So if we can get Blake Griffin, I don't know how good of an actor he is. We could do that. That would be pretty cool. But if someone's going to place me in a movie, gosh, I need to have someone in a wheelchair, because it's a big topic amongst the disabled community that we don't have enough actual authentic representation in movies. So I've got to find someone that looks like me in a wheelchair, I think, that's actually disabled.
All right. If you'd like to apply for the role, you know where to find the man. Joe, thank you so much for coming on. And oh, look, Joey just said The Rock, but he's not in a wheelchair. And
you gotta get yeah.
And quite frankly, he's nowhere near as talented or as Joe. So
I don't think we can afford The Rock for my movie either.
Well, we'll see. Well, listen, Joe, thank you again for coming in. We'll see you in the after show shortly. And as for me, I will be back on Sunday with a Mother's Day special. So I will see you then. See you in the Zoom room.